Hi guys, Michael Abayomi here. So the second episode of season 2 of House of the Dragon just aired. And much like I did last week, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts about the various events and things that happened within the episode, which was titled Rhaenyra the Cruel. Make of that title whatever you will, but in any case, this discussion will be filled with spoilers for the episode, so consider this a spoiler warning in case you haven't watched the episode and you don't want to know what happens beforehand. So the episode opens in the aftermath of the brutal ending of the previous one, which saw the death of Prince Jaehaerys at the hands of those two assassins, and this basically sends the entire court in the Red Keep into a state of disarray. We see all the various lords and maidens being gathered and questioned as they are trying to figure out what had happened and how it was allowed to happen right there under their noses. And in the midst of all this, we see Aegon going berserk as he declares full-on war with Team Black. He's basically on that warpath right now, and this signals the true start of the Dance of the Dragons. In stark contrast to his brother, we actually see Aemon, who appears to be level-headed and calculating. But as we later find out during the episode, he's actually harboring some level of guilt, because truly he didn't mean to kill Lucerys like he did at the end of last season. All that was a mistake, and all of this that is happening right now, the war between the two houses, was spun off by that one action, and he kind of feels responsible for it. So we actually get to see that more sensitive side of him as he's trying to come to grips with everything that is happening. The potential confrontation between him and Daemon, these were the things that were basically weighing on his mind. Also, in direct contrast to last episode, this episode sees Team Alicent being the ones forced to mourn the loss of a loved one. As we see Alicent mourning the events while her father Otto Hightower is calmly processing what has happened, even though he vows vengeance. Basically, he's already calculating and trying to capitalize on the situation to see how they can benefit from this, and we get to see this play out in the council meeting that they have, because the whole plan they had was to blame the whole thing on Rhaenyra, regardless of guilt, because it was clear that something like this couldn't have been orchestrated by someone like Rhaenyra. But in a bid to further delegitimize her claim to the throne, a funeral procession is held for the young prince, where it is made clear that Rhaenyra was the one held accountable for what had happened to him. And I just have to say that, similar to last episode, like, this was a very tough scene to watch. It was a very emotional scene because you could see the people of King's Landing being swept up by the grief being suffered by Helena and Alicent. And in the midst of all that, there was this moment where the wagon carrying the dead prince's body gets stuck, and for a split second it actually looks like his head was going to be severed from that body again, and I actually had to brace myself just for that eventuality, but I was glad to see that that wasn't what happened. Over at Dragonstone, news of what had happened in King's Landing eventually reaches Rhaenyra, which prompts her to confront Daemon and ask whether he had orchestrated the whole thing. And Daemon being Daemon, he didn't give a straight answer. He was playing coy, but he made it clear that that wasn't his intention. He never actually planned for any of this to happen. And if you remember, in the last episode, they actually cut away after the assassin had asked what they should do in the events that they don't find Aemon. So it is actually left unclear whether he had actually given them specific instructions to go after Prince Jaehaerys instead. And from what Daemon is claiming here, it will appear that he never actually gave that instruction. But this still prompts Rhaenyra to declare that she can no longer trust him, after which Daemon leaves on his dragon Caraxes for destinations unknown. I guess we'll find out in the next episode, but right now it is clear that there's a rift between the two of them, and it is unclear if it can ever be mended. Going back to King's Landing, it will appear that I actually jumped the gun on Criston Cole last week, because I made a declaration that I was liking the direction his characterization was headed, thinking that he had grown and become more level-headed and was not being driven by revenge as much as he was in the prior season. But man, it sure seems like I got that one wrong, because this episode you could see him really taking out his anger on Sir Eric, and he even blames Sir Eric for failing to prevent what had happened to Prince Jaehaerys, even though Criston Cole himself, being a hypocrite that he is, was busy shacking up while all that was happening. But basically he orders Eric to infiltrate Dragonstone by pretending to be his twin brother Eric in a bid to kill Rhaenyra, and in a sick twist of fate bring an end to the whole conflict with the very device that they had intended to use on them. Another thing I got completely wrong from last episode was just how much say the two assassins were going to be having in future events, because they were quickly met by Aegon's swift retribution and made to answer for their crimes. But this ends up undoing most of the goodwill that Otto Hightower had worked hard to garner from the people, and he makes his displeasure known to the king. But the king, already being influenced by the words of Larry Strong from the last episode, decides that it was high time that he let Otto Hightower go, and he names Sir Criston Cole as his new hand instead. And I just have to say that there has to be like a record for the person that has lost the job of the hand the most, because this is like the second time that Otto Hightower is losing this job. But this time there's a certain degree of permanence to what is happening, as you actually get to see that Otto Hightower himself has come to realize that some of the machinations they've been involved in might have not been for the greater good as they thought, as he's beginning to see that Aegon might not be as malleable and controllable as he once thought. But before leaving, he still leaves his daughter Alicent with instructions to try and guide the king on the right path, just to make sure that everything doesn't spiral out of control and they lose everything they've worked to build. But the climax of the episode centers upon Eric's infiltration of Dragonstone, which went according to plan, as he's able to impersonate his brother and walk right through the doors. But just before carrying out his mission, he's confronted by his brother Eric, and the two of them are engaged in a fight to the death. And even though Eric comes out victorious at the end of the fight, he still felt so much shame and pain for having to kill his own brother that he's forced to take his own life. And I just have to say that I was a little bit underwhelmed by the outcome of this particular confrontation, because this is something that they've kind of been building up since the first season when they introduced the two twins. And I always had this belief that the confrontation, the fight between the two brothers, was going to be something on the same level with Clegane from Game of Thrones. I don't know what gave me that impression, but that was the expectation I'd built up for myself. So I guess in a way, I'm the one that kind of let myself down. But the fights to me felt a bit underwhelming, as it didn't really seem to move the needle one way or the other. Things are brought full circle by the end though, as we see Aegon finally taking the time to mourn the loss of his son properly. And Alicent, even though she had been unable to find the words to console him, eventually heads back to her bedchambers, where she once again hooks up with Criston Cole. But looking at this episode as a whole, it succeeds in moving the overall story forward while dealing with all the ramifications from the last episode, because we really needed this time to process what had happened at the ending of that last episode. That brutal act that was committed and the grief that Tim Green is going through right now, all of that needed to be explored, which was what was done in this episode. And looking at the preview for the next episode, it looks like this is where we'll start to see the real story kick into gear, because it looks like the first stages of that war, of this dance of dragons, is going to be starting as both sides are armed and fully loaded. Anyway, these are just my thoughts about the second episode of season 2 of House of the Dragon. What did you think about the fights between Eric and Eric, or any of the other events that took place during the episode? Let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed watching this discussion, and to subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on if you'd like to see more discussions like this in the future. And until the next one, this is Michael, signing off.